Hey, welcome everybody. My name is Tom Jacobs, and this is Loving Lilith, Reclaiming Your Instinct in a Time of Pandemic. I'm on the web at tdjacobs.com and healingsuicide.com. So I do evolutionary astrology, and also I'm an energy worker and a channel and a psychic medium as well sometimes. So this presentation today is geared toward archetype and psychology and myth. There isn't astrology a lot in here. Actually, there's no astrology in here. I want to take this opportunity to reframe using this archetype we use in astrology and that I specialize in, reclaim, how to understand a different kind of way of looking at the pandemic and some of the experiences that you're having as an individual and that we're having as a collective. So if you do want to learn how to use Lilith, the true black moon and birth charts, I am doing a webinar that starts July 25th for 8 weeks and using True Black Moon Lilith and astrology charts. And I'll teach you house sign aspects as well as culture, myth, psychology, and do some work with examples. So I will be getting into that. I've never taught that before. I've been focused on Lilith since 2004 when I dove in to it and said something needs to be figured out. And so I specialized in it, and it just occurred to me a couple months ago, I've never taught people how to use it in charts. Periodically, a tutoring student will ask me something, but I've never designed a course. So I've done that now, and I'm going to start that July 25th. If you want to know more about Lilith and how I work with the true black moon on this archetype, other resources include the book, Lilith Healing the Wild, which a lot of people have. Some of you may have it already. That's on Amazon, Kindle, and tdjacobs.com. Also, the Black Moon Lilith Natal Report, which is based on the astrology info in the book. And finally, Loving Lilith and End to Shame, home study healing course. And that's a deep dive. And I think that for people in quarantine wanting to get deep into their own experience with Lilith and heal a lot of things about patriarchy, family, autonomy, sexuality, will find that really useful. And that's on tdjacobs.com. All right. So first, let me just tell you how I look at Lilith, an instinctive energy in the human root chakra or first chakra, the base of the human energy field, which is located around the anus. And so if you know from your spiritual studies, people think we need to go up to attain spiritual enlightenment. That's what a lot of spiritual traditions teach us. I teach that we need to get in our bodies to be sane. And yeah, then let's open it up. But let's start in the root. And so Lilith is an instinctive energy that is related to the root. So it's related to your biochemistry, your emotions, your energy field, and your physical body. The root chakra being the kind of nexus of all those systems. Lilith is an instinctive yes, no that you can't explain. And again, biochemistry, instinct, you're just drawn to this, you're pulled to this food or that person, or you reject that food or that person or whatever. And it's an instinctive energy that we mostly have forgotten how to listen to. It's a lot of what this teaching about my teaching for you today about the pandemic is about. So when it's active, it affects all areas of life: relationships, family, healthcare, sexuality, everything. How we spend our time and energy, including what we do for a living or how we earn resources and use them. This instinctive sense in our root chakra is far away from our mind in the sixth chakra. So it's instinctive, right? It's not logical. It's pre-logical. Therefore, it's considered illogical by the predominant culture. Talk more about that. So Lilith teaches us that we're part of the natural world, that we're animals, in fact, that we have instinct, that natural things can't always be controlled. Like, for example, I'm going to the store to buy these 5 foods. When I pick one up, my body says no. I can't control that. I could buy it anyway, but that's my mind overriding the instinctive nature or instinctive information in my body. So the body can't always be controlled either. And that's part of what I want to put your attention on. So expanding this, we're part of the natural world. Nature unfolds. Nature does what it does. Life evolves, right? A central thing about evolutionary astrology, we focus on the evolution of consciousness, both over the course of many lifetimes and in any individual given lifetime. And at times, a new virus appears, right? This one's related to SARS. It's not out of nowhere, right? It's it's a phase of evolution, right? It's evolving from a pre-existing thing, and it's part of this family of coronaviruses. And it doesn't matter if we don't like it that a new virus appears. This is part of what Lilith can teach us. Some of what I'm saying here is gonna sound like a negative to you, and well, it's not the bad news. I don't want you to take it in a negative way. I don't want you to be 3 minutes into this video and say, this guy's telling us it's fine that we have a virus. That's not really what I'm getting at. But it doesn't matter if we don't like it, because it's the natural world unfolding, it's evolution, it's beings, it's, in this case, we don't think of a virus as having consciousness like we do, but it's life, and it seeks to survive like we do. So that we don't like it isn't the bad news it might seem to be. It's about, again, the path of the evolution of consciousness. Why should I value my consciousness and the evolution of my consciousness and not accept what's going on in the natural world? Little patriarchal arrogance, right? Okay. So sometimes painful things happen. Life happens and death happens. We want to celebrate life. We want to not have to think about death, but this is part of being on this planet. And this is a teaching for Lilith. And it's part of being on Earth. So in the social context, our mindset for thousands of years has us tending to fear nature and working hard to control and tame it. We feel safe when we can control something, or tame it, or tamp it down, or eradicate what can't be controlled. I always think about this example of which most of us might kind of take for granted and not really focus on, but what do you do when you find bugs in your house? What do you do if you find you have a mouse in your kitchen? What do you do? And that sense of nature is in my space, and we might react negatively and, call someone or get a chemical or a trap or something. But we feel safe when we don't have to deal with what we can't control. And that's what we've been conditioned into believing should be normal. And that is a mindset, right? A stance and attitude of mind. And again, Lilith is this wisdom of the natural world that exists in your root chakra, as if, well, akin to you being born preloaded with software. Like you come out of the factory preloaded with software. So this is the philosophy of life many cultures have grown up around for a long time, and this is patriarchy, patriarchal thought. We should be able to control things. We should be able to manage these things. We should build the world as we wish it. So where this comes from is a divorce from the goddess. To be safe, humans, but all that is, like the divine consciousness that humans comprise, reoriented to control-based ways of seeing the world and living, to save ourselves from the whims of, a mercurial goddess, right? These weather events, these things, we have to come up with new technologies to protect ourselves. We have to organize in different ways to make sure that we're not susceptible to all the dangers that the world offers, right? We were tired of feeling at the mercy of the goddess, and we essentially lost faith for a reason I'll talk about in a second. We lost faith that things were fine the way they were. And we call her Mother Nature today quite often when things in the natural world mess our lives up. So I just think about this with the quarantine, and so I've been talking to some, lots of different clients or different kinds of people with different kinds of chart signatures and experiences. The people who have stuff in the fourth house, like a south node, even a north node in the fourth house, people who have Cancerian moons, some of them are saying to me, oh yeah, this quarantine thing, I haven't been this happy in a long time. And it's because of the energetic sensitivity, the need to nest and root. You're told to stay in your house. Some of us Cancerian fourth house types are kind of thriving in the quietude, right? But a lot of people aren't. So this relationship with nature, right? This thing has caused us all this havoc and all of this harm. And, this is also related to this idea of, Mother Nature and personifying with nature. I was listening to some NPR interview a few weeks ago where some very smart lady was talking about, I can't remember what show or what interview, but she was talking about the language we use to, it would have been on the media because it was an analysis of news reporters using these phrases, but talking about the war. We're at war. And this lady said, this academic said, I think of it in terms of I am being schooled because my body hasn't learned about this virus yet, hasn't learned about how to encounter this being. And it was very new, this kind of sense of, yeah, we're learning. Our immune systems are learning. It was a very Lilith kind of way of looking at it. Instead of we're at war, we must, vanquish the enemy and all that stuff. So this divorce from the goddess, the advent or beginning of patriarchy, we decided to take control. We're not losers who are going to wait around and be bullied by this cruel being. We're going to make the world. We're going to build what we want. So that's kind of where this mental focused energy that we live with quite often and can often dominate our lives and does dominate many, many social constructs around the world. That's where it comes from. So the patriarchal worldview, let's summarize 6,000 years of human history for large portions of the planet. Not everybody, not every culture, but the dominant. It's become dominant over that time. Number one, humans are the best. Number two, humans can do anything. Number three, if something goes wrong, it's nature or an angry God working against us. Because we're the best and we can do anything. So if something doesn't work, well, something's wrong. And number four, but since things keep going wrong, maybe we're being punished. So we had that sense of separating ourselves from the goddess because we felt that like weather events that wiped out half of our food and half of our family and our kin, we felt these things as punishments. We wanted to figure out how to protect ourselves. But nature keeps happening. Things keep going wrong. We keep finding out we can't control certain things. So maybe we're being punished. So when something goes wrong, we have to go to war with it. Okay. So, but this is where I want to get to with this. We believe that pain means that it is an indication that we're doing something wrong or that we deserve something. But pain and suffering are learning vehicles for the evolution of consciousness. You on your path, me on my path, but us together collectively too. All beings living on earth are subject to the laws of nature, and that is not a punishment. So that's central to this message for you today about Lilith, instinct, and the pandemic, like reclaiming instinct. Okay, now to be clear, pain isn't a punishment. Suffering isn't punishment. Loss isn't punishment, and death isn't punishment. Okay, so you're on okay, so you're on lockdown. You're quarantined. I like this little headline thing: lockdown, quarantined. So pulled into quarantine, you are stuck with yourself, with your emotions. With yourself, sorry. And also whatever energies and emotions and beliefs floating around within you that you would normally distract yourself from with your schedule. Let's say that you're working from home. You might say, but I'm still working so many hours, or even the same amount of hours perhaps. But you're not distracted by the commute. You're not distracted by the in-person stuff that happens when you get to work, wherever you work. So you have more time to be aware of yourself and your emotions. You probably normally would want to distract yourself from these things. Again, your mind wants and craves distraction from. And one of the key points here, whatever it is that you're finding yourself locked down, or whatever crummy emotion or painful emotion or disempowered belief or attitude that you are quarantined with in your home, or even that others have, you might live with someone who also has painful emotions and crummy beliefs. You're quarantined together, or more people, whether you're alone or with other people. Notice how parts of you want to be distracted. Notice how parts of you don't want to sit and deal with your feelings. And the reason is, as I said earlier, we can't control them. I don't like that I feel this, whatever, insert emotion here. I don't like it. I don't like that I feel this. So I would like to, I'm going to watch that series on Netflix again that I just finished 2 months ago. or whatever. Or I don't know, I wonder if there are crackers, or look, a bird, some kind of distraction that our brain is trying to prevent us from really settling into our bodies. Because we've been trained for thousands of years that progress matters and that intellect matters. And again, humans are the best and humans can do anything. And if we can't do something, well, we got to fight. So you may be occupied by these parts of you who feel things in serious ways. Now, these emotions, beliefs, and energies will be activated by the loss, all these things, the loss of normalcy, loneliness, fears of the future, uncertainty, maybe financial concerns, which for many people have been and are becoming more legitimate as we go, grief about the situation, as well as for those who have been who have died, who have been lost, and also those who are, so to speak, again, on the front lines without the adequate protection that they need because of the, government's response, at least here in the U.S. Supply chain issues, coordination issues, not taking responsibility, all kinds of low Saturn energy that some people in the world, especially here in the U.S., we're definitely experiencing. So these will be activated. These parts of you will come up. Now, the way I look at a human is your consciousness, and part of that is you are your consciousness that exists across time. Part of it you're aware of. Your intentional conscious self, we'd say conscious self. But unconscious, there's a lot more parts of you down there, so to speak, or behind those curtains, behind those walls or scrims or whatever. So different parts of you are activated through different feeling states and fears and ideas and vibrations. Like some part of you comes forward and might come forward, and some part of a person, 60,000 people have died in the US, but many more across the world. I just don't have that number in my head. God, 60,000 people have died. That sense of some part of you might come forward and say, oh, I know what this is. This is tragedy, and everything's going to go to hell. Everything's lost. So then you might feel some anxiety or panic or dread or fear. A part of you comes to the surface to say, oh, I know what this is, because in some other lifetime, that person, that other life self watched such a situation unfold. Okay. So here we go, reclaiming your instinct. Basically, how can you live with Lilith? Okay, here. And making peace with Lilith is a key opportunity now. I've talked about this, the quarantining and the pandemic stuff, and the idea of like governmental response, and like people also mobilizing to help each other in new ways and new connections of community, though we're not physically in each other's presence so much. I've talked about that in terms recently of Saturn entering Aquarius, square Uranus already in Taurus. And then, of course, we recently had that new moon in Taurus, conjunct the Uranus, square the Saturn. And that sense of Saturn in Aquarius, square Uranus in Taurus, like necessity is the mother of invention. You have to figure out new ways to do that, right? But some people will be kind of stunned by their feelings and stuck, right? And other people will have a jolt and then get into action. And so we're kind of having this opportunity. So I'm kind of seeing that Saturn square Uranus bit, though it's not perfecting until I think December, because Saturn stations, May 11th under 2 degrees and Uranus is already beyond that. It doesn't perfect, but that energy of like, how can we make changes, right, and evolve? So I've talked about this quarantining stuff in terms of that. If you're removed from society and you still have to get something done, or if you don't have the tools, or if you have some special food you buy and it's no longer available, you have to figure that out. Like necessity is the mother of invention. But this Lilith bit is another layer of how I see this opportunity. It can take you, being locked down, can take you into yourself, as I've said. Let's talk about the Hermit, because Lilith is a parallel path. So think about the Hermit. Sometimes you might have an experience where you're, pulled into your 4th house or pulled into your 12th house or something like that, where you feel alone, or people vanish, or suddenly you just aren't connecting and it's lonely and everybody's gone and it's just you. And somebody might say to you, oh, you know, the hermit archetype, or I might say to you, the hermit archetype is an opportunity to go within to find out what really makes you tick, who you really are. But it can be lonely, and it requires the cessation of normal connections. I had this friend years ago who emailed a bunch of his friends. I was on this list, and he said, I'm going on this personal path for, I don't know if it was 6 months or something. He was basically saying, I am not going to speak unless I have to, like for a job or something. And I'm going to do this personal process, and I'm not going to talk and hang out and be available. Like, he chose to go into hermit mode. Most of us may find ourselves pushed into it without choosing it at different phases of our lives. But now, many of us are in that phase. And even if you live with somebody, you might naturally, or other people, you might naturally have a sense of, wait, I want to just be quiet. Saturn in Aquarius, square Uranus and Taurus, right? The Lilith opportunity, the hermit archetype coming up. In terms of Saturn square Uranus, there's a sense of I need to be original, but I have to focus on the essential elements, or the essential tools. I need to free myself from conventions and expectations, but I need to do it in a very efficient, eagle-eyed, uncompromising way that creates self-respect, organization, and ultimately success. So there, I need not to talk. I need not to listen, right? That's also part of the hermit thing. I can't get clear on what I'm really made of if I have to talk about the weather with you, or whatever. Or if I hear you say the same thing over and over again, I can't be with myself. Or if I can hear your music coming out of your phone or whatever, that sense of needing to be alone. So the hermit archetype, many of us are kind of pushed in that direction right now. Now, the Lilith is a parallel path. You can't know who you are if you don't go inward. Now, the symbol of the hermit is an older person. In the tarot deck, it appears to be a man. If I'm correct, if I remember correctly, there's a long beard, a white beard. But that sense of somebody who is a hermit is an older person who has been through this long process. And of course, even in the symbolism of the tarot, it doesn't have to be an old person, but it's somebody who's going through an internalized process, and time works different, and they become aware of themselves in new ways, and certain habits and assumptions about who they are and what the world is for and who other people should be. These things fall away as you focus on this internalized, essentializing view of who you are. With Lilith, there's a little more drama. And so I'll just tell you briefly the story of Lilith, if you don't know how I tell it. When in Genesis, when God creates Adam, male and female, that's Adam and Lilith together, called Adam. But after all the animals are named, Adam says, I don't have anyone to play with because everyone else has a mate. And God says, well, I made you male and female together, which is a very high state of evolution. I'm paraphrasing God. And Adam says, but I'm lonely. So God splits, and there's a natural masculine Adam, natural feminine Lilith. The natural masculine always tries to direct and shape and therefore control things. The natural feminine is. So in the story, as I tell it, Adam likes trying to manage Lilith, and she's like, no, I'm not your slave, dude. So she leaves him. And she goes off and lives this other life. And it's said that she frolics with demons by the Red Sea, but just other beings who are not afraid of this patriarchal God. And she says she has all these immortal children, like creative output. She's free, she's sexual, she's autonomous, she's alive. And Adam is lonely, so he asks God to make her come back. But she won't come back. So God threatens her, if you don't come back, I'm going to have all of your immortal children will die. So she weighs being a slave to this guy or watching all my kids die, like watching my creativity and my progeny, my kids go out the window. And she can't be the guy's slave because she has to be autonomous. So God lets these children die, and she goes into deep grief. What we hear is rage, but it's about grief. It's about pain. An impossible situation I had to free myself so I'm not controlled or this dude's slave, and then I get punished for it. So a lot of Lilith people become Lilith people through drama. I just want to point out the difference with the Hermit path, where you might find yourself or you might choose to limit social interaction over time. But with Lilith, it's typically my survival is at stake, my emotional, my physical survival. I can't be abused. I can't be controlled. I can't be shamed for just showing up. I can't be treated, a second-class citizen. I can't accept that. My self-respect won't let me accept that. So the Hermit archetype is a great model for all of this, yet I want to acknowledge that people who live Lilith stories quite often live with a lot of fireworks to set them on this path. And people who are thrown out, people who feel cast out, right? That is a Lilith thing, where the Hermit might simply retreat to the edge. So to finish the story, so Lilith is in grief, and Adam says, but God, I'm still lonely. So God creates Eve out of a portion of Adam so he won't be lonely. He has a helpmeet or helpmate. And because Eve is a derivative, she'll never assert equality and autonomy and pull that crap that Lilith did. So that's kind of the story as we receive it, like Eve is a good woman and Lilith is a bad woman. Lilith won't go along with the story, and Eve will do anything she can to please the man. And that's the kind of cultural crap that we're trying to heal and come out of, and integrate both parts of Lilith and Eve together, and really get in there. Because Adam is not all bad either. Like Adam understands being supportive of a hierarchy and structure and working with others. Adam is more of a team player, right? So those are not. If you read my material and my book and other places, I kind of make fun of Adam figures and Lilith figures because they're just yes people. But I do think it's important also to get along with others. It's not only about Lilith and Lucifer. Okay. All right. So Lilith themes. Let's related to this situation that we're all going through with our isolation, the pandemic, disconnection from family and loved ones. It's easy to paint this picture of Lilith left this horrible, controlling, abusive person, Adam, but Adam is her other half, like literally. We use that phrase, right, in our important relationships or our love relationships, like this is my other half, right? But in the story, that's exactly what's happening. He's her other half, and she had to leave him. Being pushed out of society, right? Being told you don't belong here, you can't go here. So modifying that a little bit here. Feeling ostracized or shunned or otherized is part of it. Being on one's own, having to become resourceful, or feeling alone and having to be with yourself. That's a very Lilith kind of process. And needing to figure out new ways to manage, but also sometimes it's about literal survival. Not for everybody right now, but sometimes it is. But with Lilith, it is. With Lilith, it quite often is. And then finding resourcefulness and resiliency within. That's where we're gonna go with this. So let's talk for a moment about dealing with emotions and the problems that your mind has with emotions. That they exist. Remember, part of you feels safe if you can control things to go up in your mind and to try not to deal with the feelings and emotions, right? The details related to emotions, that the emotions contradict each other, that there could be a variety of parts of you active at any given time. They change, they shift, they evolve, they flow over time, sometimes quickly. In other words, you can't control them. Finding Lilith within involves uncovering a survival instinct. So what I'm getting at is, like with this business, your mind doesn't want to deal with emotions. But if you want to get in your body, you have to deal with emotions. You have to deal with how they rest in your body, how they change, the different content, the contradictions. So finding Lilith within can involve uncovering a survival instinct. Like I said, not literal for everybody, but it can feel that way in some. Lilith in her story has to make it. It is an issue of survival. Nobody's providing for her. Nobody's helping her. She has to figure it out. She doesn't have a choice, or she does have a choice, but it's like, I have to figure out how to be resilient, or I guess I'll give up and die. And I think about this kind of a Lilith, kind of Plutonian theme of digging deep and finding the resourcefulness and the resiliency. You know, the way I might often say to somebody is, you're stronger than the pain that you feel, or you're stronger than any emotion that might come up within you. But you sometimes have to get tested to find that out, or to be pushed into, if you will choose to be stronger. That potential is within you because you're human, to be stronger than fear and pain. It's the inherent, seed of Plutonian power in everyone's Plutonian empowerment path, as I teach it. So no, since we don't know how long this will last, deeper issues related to survival fears might come up in some people. So you have to deal with that too. Yeah, we have to deal with those things too. Like, it's fine. Like, my brain can say, oh yeah, I got to cut my hair. My girlfriend got to cut my hair soon. I ordered some clippers. We're going to cut it. But it's like, part of me was like putting off getting a haircut because we'll be open again in a month or two. Like, this was in January when this was starting to come up, and I was like, yeah, I mean, it's not going to last forever. Well, it feels like 5 forevers already for some people. So those fears might come up even as the brain is trying to, put them down, or trying to not pay attention to them. So let's talk about reclaiming your instinct. It is in listening to the body. It is in essentially having your mind's narrative and that information, but also what your body tells you, which is anathema to patriarchal thought. Since it can't be controlled, it should be treated as an enemy, whatever it is. But in this case, the body. It should be treated, as far as that philosophical thing we've been living through for so long. It can be treated as an enemy since it can't be controlled. And so, but this is about all aspects of being and all aspects of relating to your body, being in or relating to your body. Sorry, a omitted word. Name something to do with your relationship with your body, and that is Lilith. It's about Lilith. Do you not like what your body does? Do you not like that what your body is or looks like, or how much it weighs? Do you not, feel comfortable doing this or that with it? It's all Lilith themes. To be comfortable in the body. Do you feel like you're too short relative to other people, or too tall? Do you feel like you're too thin or too wide? Heavy, thin? Do you have some? Your relationship with your body is your relationship with Lilith, accepting things as they are and getting into a good groove. And I'm going to focus on your relationship with food, regarding honing your relationship with instinct. So how does your body feel when you eat something? Like, are you aware of that? Do you know what that answer is? And are you aware of how different things might require different responses or warrant different responses? And I'm not talking about your mind's sense of gratification because it got what it wanted. And I'm not talking about your tongue's response to flavor, which essentially is the desire of your mind to be entertained or wowed. I just have this joke in my mind about and how many flavors of Doritos or corn chips there are. It's like my mind would love to be entertained. I wonder what that tastes like. It's like this ridiculous thing about the mind and the brain, and my whole being is wrapped up in this part of my body, and I want to be entertained, and I'm desperate for content. What's the new Doritos flavor or whatever? And it's also not your tongue's sense of being sated, that satisfaction. Butter has a good mouthfeel. When you get fat on your tongue in food form, I mean fat on as food, some part of you relaxes because your body requires that, right? Okay. Now we get into the part of the presentation where I ran out of time. I've been so pressed for time, so I couldn't parse these next ones out. So I'm just gonna put them all up at once. How does your body feel when you eat something? But then we have to rewind to, what does your body feel when you touch a particular food, or bring that food close to your mouth? Chew, swallow. What does your body feel? What sensations, what energetic shifts might occur? I'm talking about that level of awareness, your relationship with what you put in your body. And then what does your body feel when chewed food lands in your stomach? Or 2 minutes after that, 5 minutes, an hour? What about when it leaves your body? Like being aware of bodily functions, including defecation, like being aware of how things are processed in your body and keeping an eye on that. When I eat this, that works. When I eat that, it doesn't work, right? That level of awareness. And for some of us, this is foreign. This is not at all comfortable or, or habit. And so there's this opportunity to, yeah, touch a food. What does my body feel when I touch a food? And I'll realize I'm like, I actually did this earlier. Other thing in it, which my body doesn't want. And so I had this experience where she gave me these two bottles, and they're here. So I basically, my brain looked at this white bottle, and then I read the thing and was like, yes, this will work. But then I had a different experience when I took one out and I felt it in my hand. I tuned into, how does my body respond to that? Now, sometimes it's a confusing response. I don't know what to do with it. Sometimes it's neutral, sometimes there's nothing, but sometimes there's a yes or a no. Being aware of that, my vibrational relationship with with the vibration of that substance. So what does it feel like when, you're like, oh, I have to eat, or it's time to eat, or I think it's best to eat before whatever, my Zoom meeting or my class, whatever. Then you go to the fridge or wherever and you get the things out. Are you in your body, or are you thinking about the clock and the colors and how you enjoy this or that, or how the logic of making sure you have this balance of nutrients? Are you in your body? I used to hang out with people who ate raw food who were, I don't know, was it called or something? Instinctive eaters. And the idea was you would put out a bunch of different foods that are kind of like on your program, whatever you're doing, not like diet, but like whatever program you're on. Like, let's say that you're eating at that point time, I and they were eating like raw meat and dairy, and as well as like vegetables, and so you might put out like three kinds of one kind of food and see what your body's drawn to. And that kind of instinctive or instincto eating, that's very Lilith. That sense of, I'm guided to this, I'm drawn to this, this makes sense to me. Okay. Yeah, so that whole process, and this is what a lot of people don't pay attention to, this idea of, okay, I'm chewing it, and then I swallow it, and I move on with my life. Well, to be aware of what your body does then, and 2 minutes later, 5 minutes later, 3 hours later, that is also super important. And also being aware of the fact that it's things in your stomach are there for so long, depending on what they are and how well you chewed it. But then it's going to move into your small intestine. You might have a response within your small intestine you didn't have in your stomach. So knowing those things about how your body works is really important. Instead of the mind treating the body as this pesky machine that keeps breaking down, to have that relationship with it in real time. That's really what I'm getting at. Okay, so during lockdown, you can learn to hear your body in new and deeper ways. In separating out emotions from each other, feeling the messages of your body, learning more about what your body needs to function. Like, I'm taking these digestive enzymes, and there's one of the ingredients just doesn't work for my body, and I didn't really get it until my girlfriend read the label and said, I think that this is an issue. And I was like, oh my God, that is, yeah, it's not, my body doesn't want that. So here are these other ones. So listening to those messages, it doesn't feel right, doesn't seem right. The way I talk about this with food and Lilith quite often is, when you're in a store, smell the produce. This is the easiest way to learn about Lilith, what it's really about, not relationship issues and sexuality and blah, all that stuff. Starting with the internal alignment with what feels right to you, right, as an embodied being who is a member of the biosphere here on Earth. And food is a great way. And the example I always use is, let's say that I always eat some particular kind of produce and my body loves it. And I go to the store, and when I look at it, I kind of feel something. And I'm like, well, I always get this, so I pick it up. So I pick up the white bottle of produce. So I pick it up, and something's not right? Something, right? Now I might smell it and it smells chemically the same exact way that it always does, but I no longer want it. It doesn't smell good. I've had this with bell peppers. I used to eat bell peppers all the time. I no longer eat them. And even when one pops up now and I smell it, my nose and brain say, that's amazing. That's such a vibrant smell, especially red and yellow peppers. Um, but when I was a kid, I ate green peppers endlessly, but my body says, no, 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 I can't eat those. So it's like, maybe I don't get that trip. And I go and I find out what my body does respond to. That's the easiest way to learn about Lilith and instinct, because you don't have to know that broccoli is super high in vitamin C for your body to say that's what I need. It's good to know things. It's good to understand nutrition, but let your body guide you also so that it's comfortable and happy. So as I said, most of us, this is a great opportunity with food because most of us eat multiple times a day. I'm not being a smart aleck, but like I fast sometimes and others do too. And but most of us do eat multiple times each day. So there's an opportunity, so many chances to tune in and pay attention. But I want to say invest your attention, your attentiveness in the body's processes, its responses. Now, as far as relationships and sexuality and what you do for a living and all the things that Lilith affects every part of life, what communities you're part of and what you give your time and energy to and what you participate in. When you have this thing about food up and running, those other things follow naturally because you'll have an energetic and or chemical response to people. How do I know? How do I know if I can trust myself to like connect with the right people? Trust Lilith within regarding food. Separate food from emotions. Deal with your emotions. Listen to your body regarding the food, and you get Lilith up and running. Literally, when I was thinking about this, I was like, do I want to include house and sign stuff with Lilith? And no matter where your Lilith is in your birth chart, no matter what aspects, no matter house and sign, no matter what's going on with your Lilith, it represents an instinctive thing that's broader that I wanted to really get into because it's a life skill or life hack if you want to years and be trendy. So back to this Hermit archetype. The Hermit is focused on a long-term goal of becoming who he or she is. A long-term goal of becoming the self. And it can take a long time. And during quarantine or on lockdown or stay shelter at home, whatever, external distractions are limited. So you become more aware of the habits of your mind running your life. And that is where the Hermit and Lilith, it can be so important. I wrote desperate for content, etc. And this is because I've been thinking about this a lot. That phrase got stuck on my head, desperate for content. When I talked about this in one of the last videos I did a few days ago. But the governor of Florida here in the U.S. announced, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that essential employees include professional wrestlers and all the people who work on those productions. So new professional wrestling matches can be televised. And part of his reasoning was that people are desperate for content. And I was starting to think about like a root chakra connection to community. That's what the video is about. It's the COVID-19 number 10. If you go looking for it, it's got a red picture as the graphic. But this idea of like my root chakra is now disconnected. I can't hang out with people, or I'm socially distanced or physically distanced. What am I going to do? And there's that sense of needing to go inward to establish security inside the body. Hermit and Lilith have to do with that. And being desperate for content means that your mind doesn't want to relax, or you have believed that your mind's propaganda is true, that it is the only game in town. You should always listen only to your mind. Lilith exists too. This Hermit exists as well. So for a moment, let's just take how I would interpret Lilith's view of a pandemic. You're part of nature and I'm part of nature. And this is a time through disconnection to learn about who I am and what I need, a time for you as well to do that for yourself. And how I can become stronger and more self-sufficient and in tune with nature, even if I'm in my house the whole time, in tune with nature as it exists within me, as I described. Healthy Lilith lives in tune with an inner sense, a sensation of nature. What is natural? Again, root chakra, pre-logical, pre-verbal, pre-rational, instinctive yes, no. This works for me, that doesn't work for me. And then to get closer to the end here, Lilith's view on this loss of life. Because I don't want to do this whole presentation and not acknowledge many people have died and a lot of people are suffering. And I don't say this to be, let me just say this. I don't say this to be, I don't do any of this to be indifferent to what people actually experience. But if we look through the eyes of Lilith, as I talked about earlier in the presentation, you are part of the natural world, and illness occurs. And your body encounters, sometimes a body will encounter substances and organisms that it doesn't know what to do with, or it perceives as threats, or it must defend itself against, kind of have an immune response, whether it's like a minor irritation or sensitivity, or a full-blown allergy, or something like an illness because of an organism like a virus. And so we're part of nature, and we're all learning, and your consciousness is evolving. How can you become the source of validation and love for yourself? How can you learn to embody divine source's wisdom here on earth? Well, the fact is that spirituality doesn't mean connecting with goddess and God outside you as being an intuitive or a meditator or a psychic. You're in a body for a reason. So Lilith's view on this loss of life may seem indifferent, but it's not. Healthy Lilith is present in relationships, and yet she understands that things change. They will change. Seasons change. People die. Animals die. Things change. Lilith's path involves quite a lot of grief, right? From losing her own home and mate and children. So Lilith won't shy away from her feelings about this loss of life. And she doesn't see pain, loss, or death as punishments. So I think, yeah, that's the end of the presentation. I hope that, and then of course, I'll just put this slide up again for the 8 weeks to learn how to use the true black moon in birth charts starting July 25th. Yeah, so I hope this has been helpful, and we're here at the end. I would just invite you to deal with your feelings, deal with yourself, be aware, stay aware. I focused here on this instinctive thing and paying attention to food and nutrition and separating that out from emotions and the need for content or the need for your brain to be entertained, like a new flavor of corn chip or something. I focused in that way because that is a way that you can, even in this time of not being connected in the world so much to each other in person, that you can undergo a deepening and enriching experience into your own nature, and honor whatever it is that you feel and need, and don't shy away from feelings because your mind doesn't want to have to deal with messiness. So I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for the opportunity, Linda, and everybody to come here and do this, and that's what I have for you today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tom. Just to clarify, were you talking about Black Moon Lilith all the way throughout this, or the Lilith Trinity?
I don't use the Lilith Trinity. So, and some people talk about the true and the mean, and there's a quarter between them. I don't do that at all. Only the true black moon, and then I also use the asteroid Lilith 1181. So this is all about the oscillating apogee or the true black moon.
Got it. Fantastic.
Yeah. For me, the true black moon is this, it's this change. It's a function of the moon's imperfect orbit around the Earth. So it's always changing. It's always like this, if you look in a chart and you put it in like solar fire and you time, advance it day by day, you'll see it goes forward 10 days, retrograde 20 days, direct motion 15 days. It's kind of always, I say, zigzagging back and forth, but it's not a body. It's a point that's a function of the moon's imperfect orbit around the Earth, right? As the moon is orbiting the Earth, not around the axis of the Earth, which would be more consistent. It's around the barycenter, which has this kind of like weaving effect when it is calculated out, the function that Lilith is. So it's not, this thing, you can't think of it like a body, right? So some people say you should use the mean position because the true black moon is too erratic. Well, they miss the point of the archetype. It's about this instinctive changeability. So to use the mean position, which is what's most readily available, is basically to ask a Barbie doll what a woman is like, and to completely fail to talk to actual women. The true black moon, people, or talk to a doll versus a human, say it that way. We don't have to relegate it to gender, but I recently had somebody get very upset with me in an Amazon review that I was saying that women are something, and it was like not true. But I understand it comes from that comment, that thinking. But this idea of like asking a stuffed animal what a dog is like versus sitting down with a dog and getting to know the being who is there in front of you. So so anyway, yeah, I don't use the mean position at all. I recommend ignoring the mean position. And people who are doing that kind of stuff, it's cleverness in the mind, but it's not truth. And I don't want to be a jerk about that, but if you're in tune with Lilith, the mean position will never work for you. I promise you. Anyway, so that is that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And could you all please thank Tom Jacobs, everyone.
Thank you, Tom. That was
Tom.
excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Tom.
Good.
Thanks so much.
I was kind of worried about not doing astrology for you guys, but I think it's okay, right? I need a validation now. Is it okay to leave the astrology?
That is astrology. Lilith is part of astrology.
This was really
Yeah,
good.
okay, good. I just need validation. Thank you.
Excellent. Looking forward to
Okay.
next time. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.